very good afternoon and a warm welcome to everyone who has joined us on the virtual platform today. Today is day one of the Livelihoods India Summit. And in this hall, we are doing track 3, which is the gender jobs in the post-pandemic era. And in this session, we'll be dealing with the session is the gender gap in employment. As we know, India has the lowest labor force participation rates for women. There are different barriers holding India's women back, and it's not holding just women back, but it's also understood that it's holding the nation back. So in this session, we look forward to discussion that will throw up ideas for gender-sensitive HR practices and safe working environments, and how women in workforce, more women can join the workforce in India. With that, I would like to invite our esteemed panels for the afternoon today. So we have on the panel Mr. Pranav Kumar Chaudhary, Director of Operations, Dr. Reddy's Foundation. We have Kanta Singh, Country Program Manager, UN Women. And we have Sarika Gupta Bhattacharya, Director Development, Laksha University, and Founder and Board Member, Beyond Diversity Foundation. And I'm also very happy to invite Purna Rai Chaudhary, Senior Program Manager and Gender Lead, Grameen Foundation India. Purna Rai Chaudhary will be moderating the session today. Purna has over 13 years of experience of working on issues related to women's empowerment, gender justice, financial inclusion of women. And her current role at the Grameen Foundation India, she is responsible for developing gender strategy, conducting gender gap analysis, undertaking gender sensitization workshops, and ensuring gender integration within the organization's functioning and program implementation. So I'll hand over the floor to Purna now. Purna, the floor is yours.
Mayuk, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this particular session, which is titled Gender Gap in Employment. And I'm also very, very excited to introduce, in fact, talk a little bit more about our 3 panelists who have joined for this session. So Kanta Singh is the Country Program Manager, as Mike was saying, for UN Women India, where she works on education, on employment, entrepreneurship opportunities for women. And Kanta has over 25 years of experience in the management of pro-women development programs. We have Pranav, who is the Director of Operations at Dr. Reddy's Foundation and leads the foundation's flagship skilling and health initiatives. And he has over 18 years of experience as a development professional, directing a number of successful skilling initiatives and campaigns. And last but certainly not the least, Sarika Gupta Bhattacharya has over 20 years of experience working as an investment banker. But in 2011, she decided to follow her passion in social innovation, and successfully she built Beyond Diversity, which is recognized as one of global top 10 diversity consulting firms. And she's committed to the cause of inclusive leadership, gender issues, and entrepreneurship. So, on behalf of the organization, I thank each of you for agreeing to be a part of this panel and this discussion. Before I quickly, proceed further, I would like to highlight that we do have an allotted time of 20 minutes at the end of our discussion for an audience to take up audience questions. So I encourage people who have joined us today to kind of keep throwing those questions at us, and we'll curate it and ask the panelists when the time is right. Well, so, going forward and plunging right into the discussion, my first question would be to Kanta. Kanta, I would like to start with you. And, so we say that, enhancing women's participation in the workforce and employment is not only the right thing to do, but it is also the smart thing to do. So my question to you, Kanta, is that why must organizations and institutions invest in gender equality in employment and put in resources to address the gender gap in employment that we keep talking about?
Thank you, Purna, and thank you, organizers, for inviting me. This is my 3rd time in a row, and I really like coming and speaking here because there are very few events that focus on women's labor force participation, women's access to employment, and so I'm very, very happy about that. Purna, to your question, why it is a smart thing to do to have more women in the workforce. One, because employers are choosing from 50% of the talent pool, I would say. So that's how they don't get the best of the demographic advantage that we have. They don't get to choose the best, number one. Number two, it's also a matter of rights and justice, that women deserve to be there. The place belongs to them. Everything that is productive, everything that matters, everywhere that decisions are made, women belong there. That's number two. Third, if you want a more diverse workforce, if you want the best out of your workforce, you have to have a mixed workforce. It makes more business sense. And there are several studies that indicate that it makes more business sense to have both men, women, in fact, the third gender as well. All kind of diversity in terms of human being and the values and the skill set and the ethics that they bring. That's the third thing. Fourth, if India is going to be a 5 trillion economy, they can't do it on the basis of only men. It will not be inclusive growth. It will not be the economy that India has to have and deserve and can boast of in the 21st century. We are, year after year, Purna, we have been feeling, I don't know who feels embarrassed. We definitely, as women, we definitely feel embarrassed that we are going down every time in the gender index. I'm sure at some stage, Government of India, everyone feels that there is something that we have not been able to crack. So last point on that is, Purna, that it makes sense for all of us to put our heads together and understand what are the key issues, what are the key challenges, and what is it that we all need to do, starting from every girl, every individual who can realize her dreams and who can really work as a contributor and not just as a beneficiary. So these are my initial thoughts, but I'll come back to that.
Well, thank you so much. I think you really beautifully set the context of this session, because we are addressing gaps in employment here. And there's a whole lot of, our solidarity groups that we are missing out on and leveraging on, towards an economic and a holistic and an inclusive development. So thank you, Kanta, for setting that tone. I will now come to Pranav. Pranav, kind of taking a cue from Kanta, the Global Gender Gap Report of 2020, it is by the World Economic Forum, and it clearly notes that India has one of the lowest female labor force participation rate in the world. And we are ranking somewhere around 145 among the 153 countries that, chose to be a part of the study. So, my question is it only a cause of worry for us? Or do you also see a kind of a opportunity lurking there? So in the context of this report, what are some of the barriers that Pranav, you have seen, in your work, through the work that Dr. Reddy's does, for women to enter into this workforce? So if you can elaborate on some of the barriers, and then I can have a follow-up question with you.
Okay, so thank you, Purna. And as you rightly said, that we should look at it as an opportunity or as a worry. So I have a mixed feeling, because progress is possible, and that is why perhaps as a country, as a globe, we all have progressed. But progress will not happen automatically. We need to do something about that. And there is my concern as far as the decreasing women labor force participation is concerned. Why so? I have mainly three main important points to make why we should worry about it. The first is that when we talk about, and Kanta talked about that when we talk about demographic dividend and all, and being a 5 trillion or maybe 10 trillion economy in coming decade, how that will happen when you're 50% of population, you are not realizing the full potential they have. So that is my first worry, because demographic dividend is once in a lifetime opportunity for any nation. We already started losing it, and by 2045 or 50, the population will start aging. And if we are not able to reap the benefit, it's a big loss. So that is my first worry. Second is that if you look at the discussion in the different forums, or maybe the government interest to come up with certain reforms, because you have to change something, some reform should happen. And that has been the history of all those nations where the women labor force participation is crossing 80%, 85%. And it has been seen in various studies that there are one or two major barriers. There are many barriers, but major barriers where only reform can solve the issue. So, and currently we are not seeing that, okay, some reforms happening so that it will enable more women to participate. So that is my second concern. And third important concern is that there is no common agreement why the women labor force participation is decreasing year by year. If you look at last, say, 10, 15 years, it has decreased by more than 20 percentage points. Interestingly, if you read various reports or participate in various forums, there are two schools of thoughts. One school of thought is saying, no, now because women started studying, so they are studying more time in studies, and that is why they are not joining the workforce, which is encouraging. Everyone should study and grow. Second thought is that because the jobs are not there, quality jobs are not there, not only quality jobs, the entire ecosystem is not well developed, women are not feeling safe, the wage problems are there, the workplace, other support systems are not available. There are a lot of patriarchal views in our society, and these things are stopping women to participate. Now, as a country, if you are not agreeing on some common understanding, then how you will solve this issue? So these are my three worries. As your question was also about what has been our experience working in different skilling programs or other livelihood programs. See, there are many barriers we were able to identify, at least in my own research, and also based on my experience of working with Dr. Reddy's for last now 13 years. What we have found that out of those 10 barriers, one important barrier is of domestic duties. And OECD in 2014, they came up with one report, and interestingly, they captured a very important data point. That was, what is the time men in India are spending in household work, and how much time Indian women, they spend in household work. And they came up with this figure. So I'm quoting that 36 minutes daily Indian men are devoting for household work, and 360 minutes, which is 6 hours, Indian women are devoting. Now, the point is this. A group which is already doing something, now you are not monetizing that is different issue, but a person who is already giving 6 hours daily on household care work, now we want to help them or enable them to participate in workforce. It requires so many things to change. So I will stop myself here and I will come back later. Thank you, Purna.
Well, thank you so much. In fact, my follow-up question was that, what are those, initiatives? Because Dr. Reddy's is known as a leading corporate organization that started working on skill development way back in 1999. And, and today, this happens to be a primary mandate of the government of India, under the National Skill Development Mission. So, in order to kind of tap into this age group, especially women in this demography, how do you mobilize and influence young women, to participate in such skilling programs, which kind of will be the bridge between the education and employment? So, Pranav, your work is in that zone. So, what are those, initiatives that you are doing at Dr. Reddy's?
Right. So we work, our first program, which was Livelihood Advancement Business School, was picked up by Ministry of Rural Development and was scaled in the entire country. And that was like the first scaling model for country also. But as you rightly shared, that now the ecosystem is well developed. And so in our program, when we started since inception, the idea was that can we do something where at least equal participation of women should be there. But then what we realized that you need to customize your program. So if you're designing any program just thinking that equal participation will happen, it's very difficult. I'm mainly talking about skill development programs. So so many pilots we keep doing, some pilots never worked, so we had to stop those pilots. But recently what we have done in whatever we do, so one pilot we have done for women labor force participation, how to increase it, it didn't work. The pilot was basically to help women to get hyper local jobs, not by training, because many people were already having certain skills, they left job for various reasons. So when we started doing that, what we realized that women, those who had small kids, they were not able to give full time. So everything was done and we started sending them for interviews. And then when this interview started happening, many women came up with this idea, can I have this job between this to this hour, which was not suitable for the employer. Anyway, we wanted to scale it up. We stopped our pilot. And then based on learning, I wrote one article, and the then MD and CEO, Mr. Manish ji, he suggested that, Pranav, change one thing. You don't work for this 18 to 30 age group. You change the age group, make it 35 to 45, and then see what happens. Hypothesis we were testing was that those women where children have grown up now, and if we help them to get a job by giving some skill also, will they join the workforce? Interestingly, we started that pilot last year in partnership with NSDC as a knowledge partner. And then the result is very good. And what we have seen that 35 to 45 age group women, because now their children have grown up, the family support system is there, now they can come outside, work. In our cohort, 50% of women never worked. So this is their first job. Challenges what we faced is mainly from employer side, because they were not initially convinced that, oh, we are getting for entry-level job, we are getting young people, why I want to hire 35, 45. But as you know that there are many good employers also. So they supported us, okay, we will hire. So one is changing that age group. So current skilling programs in the country largely focuses on between 18 to 30 or 35. But if we can change that age group, it will enable many those women who either never worked or they had to leave job, maybe due to marriage, maybe due to having kids and their care and all. That is one. Second intervention we started making on, while designing program, we think which training program you are designing, what is the sector, what is the module. For example, if you design health program, by design, health sector will give more opportunities to women as far as the allied healthcare professionals are concerned, because you don't have control over like doctors and all. But that is why you see all the nurses, most of the nurses, 90% of nurses in the country will find women. Similarly, the allied healthcare professional, the ecosystem is designed like that. So our health program focuses mainly on women, and close to 75% women are there. In other program, close to 40-45% women are there. So strategically, we designed health program because ecosystem is like that. Similarly, if you look at the security job, and the security sector has solved this problem. You go anywhere, wherever the women will be frisked and all, the women security guard will be there. So the ecosystem is designed like that. So you have to think that, okay, while designing program, are you designing a program for automobile sector? By design, many women will not participate. And what is their qualification? Having said that, just to conclude, I'm just talking about the formal sector jobs, which is not more than 7-8% of India. If you look at the informal job, where the main chunk of opportunities and also the women, they work, that needs to be addressed. And the last point is the reform part. For example, just come up with some bill on domestic worker and see how it will impact the women participation. Because as per India's data, close to 4.5 million domestic workers are there. But ILO quoted in his report that it is a very less number we have quoted. As per their estimation, close to 2 to 8 crore domestic workers are there. Just imagine having a bill giving them their right will impact not only their status in the society, but also your labor workforce participation. So we have to think what are the low-hanging fruits we can quickly help you to improve. Otherwise, it's an alarming issue because it started decreasing. So, and if I quote CMIE data of August, September, October, if I'm not wrong, then your men participation is close to 67 and women participation is less than 10. So it's a worrying situation in that context. Over to you, Purna.
Thank you so much. I think you touched upon two very, very unique aspects. One is how existing programs just need a little bit of tweaking. And then there's a whole lot of, I think female workers who can be, ready and, prepared to enter the workforce. Like that age group that you spoke about, I think is very, very interesting, because when we are targeting skilling, I think the age group that we are targeting currently is around, I think from 18 to 35, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Right. Largely programs are
designed around that. But
because this is employer's requirement.
Yeah. And what you're saying is that is the period in a woman's or a young woman's life when she's actually thinking about probably getting married or, prioritizing home, especially in the peri-urban and rural sectors, if I may say so. So it's just tweaking that age group. You're automatically enabling many more women to at least think about coming into formal sector work or, in the employment sector. So I think that is a very, very interesting perspective. And the other is but obvious, Pranav, that, we are talking about a whole lot of women who are in informal sectors and they are toiling day in and day out, but are completely invisible. And how we can have these policies that can bring out rather semi-formalize and organize such sectors, as you said, that the domestic workers, work itself can be thought about one as a low-hanging fruit. So I think that is a very, very, very important aspects that you have, brought forward. So, kind of, moving on with the formal setup that, we probably designed our discourse today. I'll go to Sarika. Sarika, considering your past experience in working on gender mainstreaming with especially the corporate clients, the urban, setup, what do you see as systemic challenges within the corporate sector that creates hindrances for women to actively participate in the workforce? If you can, talk about some of these systemic challenges that women face. And also it'll be great to hear from you because you kind of specialize on that, some of these practical tips and suggestions that you offer these corporates, to make the workplace more conducive for women to not just participate, but also continue to work. Over to you,
Purna. And thank you, Pranav and Kanta, for actually setting the context so well. I think you've all said it all in a way. To be honest, just because we are in an urban setting compared to a rural setting, the challenges women face, and just not in India, across the globe, remains the same. It's the degrees, it's the levels with which they face, possibly will differ a bit, possibly because of the upbringing, because of some of the privileges or some of the kind of backgrounds they come from. But otherwise, they just remain the same. The patriarchal mindset, the whole biases, which is there, the stereotypical biases, the household, which Pranav very clearly said, 36 minutes, 360 minutes, and add on to the mind share. What you're talking about is the physical time being left to a woman, but there's also a mind space. Imagine a woman who is at work is also at the back of the mind, always thinking about what she needs to do to take care of her kids' exams or pick up from the school, or what's going to be made at home, or what is there in my grocery list shopping, or what needs to be taken care of the elderly people in the family. All of this caregiving as a mind share burden remains with the woman, even though she has delegated the task by taking some help either from the family or from domestic help, which Pranav said, which is also largely women population, by the way. Even then, that mind share remains with the women largely. It doesn't remain with the men. So all these challenges which we spoke about remains with the urban women population as well. So that's one of the biggest systemic challenges. From a corporate point of view, what are the challenges they face? First and foremost, most of the JDs or the job descriptions or the kind of roles which are crafted from the very beginning traditionally have been crafted or have been written down in a way or have been crafted in a way which was always suitable more for the men, for the men part of it. You will realize I just recently read in LinkedIn, one of the job profile having a senior thing, wants someone who is very, very committed, wants to work long, will be flexible in terms of working, taking stress and long hours, should be able to travel often, and so on and so forth. Immediately, you're putting a kind of a barrier for the woman applicants to applying for the job. When asked question, how much of travel does it require? It's possibly 5 days a month, which is possibly doable for many. You're not getting into specifics. You're talking about, somebody will talk about, I need a sales rock star or a ninja, which is again a very male-dominated, gender-stereotyped words, which possibly puts off many women to apply. So I'm just giving small examples, and also the mindsets and the stereotypes. I had an example of a woman coming back after her maternity and being passed over for her promotion or for a very meaty role, just because the manager assumed that she will not be able to give that time, or she would like to take some time off because her family comes from a priority. The idea is that, why can't you ask the woman? A man would be asked. The woman is never even asked. She is never even considered in that particular list of the things. But I still would like to share that there is a possible reason for hope. Excuse me. With all the policy changes which has happened recently, especially with the one woman director on the board, with the maternity policy, and also a lot of global focus on creating inclusive workplace, which many Indian companies, because they are now working globally with the global clients, with the global vendors, there's a lot of internal pressure for them to perform well in the inclusive index of the corporate culture. And because of these reasons, though initially it started a little more optics issue, the inclusivity at the workplace has increased. And Pranav is nodding his head. He was working in a corporate setup. And Dr. Reddy's is one of the leading organizations on the way they have been able to build in the inclusivity within their organization as well. And I personally believe that what starts with a legal framework, then the policy framework, then maybe optics reasons, for whatever the reasons, it's a good start. It might be skin deep right now, but at least it started. And it becomes a normalized situation when you start seeing more and more women. I'm very happy that in this panel, we are 3 women. That just shows that women are committed, they're passionate, they're purpose-driven. And the whole idea that when you normalize this kind of a situation, when more and more people see women around them working together, delivering, being role models for many other women, being role models for many other men and young boys and young girls, I think that makes a huge difference. I'm fairly optimistic for the next generation, but yes, at the urban population space, I see it happening mostly. Like, I live in Gurgaon. I live in a very privileged community, I would say. My son goes to a privileged school where for him, he always says the girls are smarter in my class than the boys. And I always tell him that, remember this throughout your life. But when in Gurgaon, you just travel for another 15 minutes back into the hinterland, landscape changes drastically. And that's what's worrying me, that there's a huge difference between India and Bharat. And unfortunately, all those numbers which we see declining is a very big challenge. And in the last 2 years, Purna, this is my last point, if we had made one step towards creating a more inclusive workplace in the corporate sector, we are also now 2 steps backward in the last 2 years because of the pandemic. The fact that the schools have not opened, the fact that there are no daycare centers, the parents are working from home with a small toddler, forget about the kids going to school, even the kids' homework, the school activities, everything is fallen back upon the woman. And I have seen so many women ultimately putting up their hand and saying, I can't do this anymore, and ultimately quitting. And this is something which is going to be a disaster, because whatever work we did, whatever good strides we made, it will only unravel, which will only make the stereotype a lot more steeper, because you will say, hey, you know what, job was not important to her at the first task. Because at the end of the day, if I'm a business person, I'm a manager, I'm looking for a stable workforce. And unfortunately, I'm losing the women in my workforce. I'm unable to get back them. So this is something also I think I would suggest, or I would really urge everybody to think through from a policy level, what can be done. The pandemic is possibly not going to go away. This work from home situation is possibly not going to go away. I'm hoping the school starts soon. I'm hoping this will remain back and we will eventually look at it as a blip. But it's a big, big cause of concern for me, at least.
Sarika, thank you so much for sharing that. And I completely agree that the last 2 years probably took us decades back, especially for women. And there was a report that was recently released by UN Women, which says that the pandemic is likely to have pushed 96 million people across the world into extreme poverty, out of which 47 million were women and girls. And also took them out of the world of work. So Kanta, here, I think I would come back to you, but obviously. So, if you can, share some of the insights from that report and, kind of, say out aloud that, how has the pandemic affected the women, especially in the world of work? And, what is the reimagination that will be needed for India to build that resilience among women and then, take them back to economic participation? So over to you, Kanta.
So to go back to the report, 3 things have happened during the pandemic, and both Pranav and Sarika have kind of highlighted those, but let me just point out one more thing, which is violence. I don't know if you've been following the reports across the globe, women have been facing violence much more than during the pandemic than they were earlier. Not that the violence cases were lesser earlier, but now they increased manifold. And reasons, I don't have to go to the reasons. We know men and women were at home, they were at each other's nerves. Many families lost the only bread earning member, or many bread earners lost jobs. So multiple things happened. Also, children were at home, sick people were at home, and there was death everywhere. So a number of things happened there. So that's one. Women's, work pressure during pandemic increased manifold, unpaid care work. So whether these were sick people at home or elderly parents, children definitely 24 hours at home, the cookings and the cleaning. And I'm talking about the urban women here who were getting help earlier. Now the maids would not come. Women were working from home, many of them. So it led to a lot of crises. The unpaid care work women had to do was much more than what you do in normal times. And the third point was that even when the incomes were going down, there were women in critical sectors like health, where they had to take care of their own safety. They had to take care of patients in a difficult situation. Also, they had to go back home and take care of their families. So many things happened. Work, getting out of work, in any case, has been happening over a period of 10 years. As Pranav mentioned, the labor force participation has been going down for 10 years now. Now, the last report, CMI report, Pranav, I also read that it says under 10%, which is so difficult to even comprehend as to where we are going as a country. On the things that probably all of us can do, I don't even blame government, but number of things that can be done should not be difficult. For example, the public spaces have to be safe for women. You go to a rural family, you go to an urban family, women's safety is a major concern, and we should not undermine it. Because that is, if one girl drops out of a work, 10 others follow suit, because her example is also then displayed to anyone. Their daughter went, look what happened to her. Right? It doesn't happen in case of men. A man dies on the road driving a rash bicycle or bike. Other men don't stop driving bike. In women's case, whether it is education, whether it is work, whether it is entrepreneurship, if one woman drops for some reason, she becomes an example for 10 others. Right? So that is one. So we need to make public spaces safe for women. and that includes workplace, because women continue to face sexual violence, women continue to face sexual harassment, and public places are really infested with people who trouble women day in and day out. Now, the cyberbullying has also started. If a woman speaks out against anyone on Twitter, on or online spaces, you know how even Barkhadat faces that kind of violence. It is difficult to the kind of names that are given. I was talking to a group of women MPs in UK 2 years back. So 26 women MPs confirmed in that meeting that they don't want to contest elections next time because their families have been 7 generations of families have been dragged into that violent space on Twitter. They said, why should we subject our families to this kind of violence? So that's one. So and Pranav, going back to your point on safety and how some sectors are women specific, I though don't agree with that, but there's a safety in numbers, Pranav. These sectors didn't become women specific. They're just that women want security around women. They feel safe, and that's how they continue to go back to the same spaces like health, for example. That's how health has become a socially acceptable occupation for women, because there are more women around. There are lesser chances of them being harassed. They have better bargaining power from employers. Also, they're still seen as caregivers. Trust me, till they reach a level, women, their nurses are still shown as a caregiver. Oh, they do it at home, they can do it also here, right? So those are the things. Another major problem is the geography. So the supply is in UP, Bihar, and North India, and the jobs are in South India. And migration of women from north to south is a huge difficulty. Marriage age and also work age also conflicts. And Pranav's study is an example where if you just save that time for women to have children and get married, probably they will stay in jobs. I also feel that we prepare our girls for marriage. We don't prepare them for careers. And that's a social problem. While any young man, if he's 8, 9, 10, his career is decided. He's going to be a pilot. He's going to be an engineer. He's going to be a policeman in rural areas, or Fauji. Girls are saying she will get married to a Fauji. She'll get married to this thing. She, in her head, she's never put that she has to be prepared for work. And that's how things starting. So career becomes an option for girls when they say. At marriageable age, girls are told every day that, agle wale decide karenge, aap kya karenge. अब तक हम डिसाइड कर रहे थे, so basically saying that अब अगले वाले डिसाइड करें, नौकरी करनी है तो उनके पूछने से कर लेना. That's a very serious conversation that takes place even in educated families. Sarika, I always give example of Gurgaon moms where 15 to 20,000 women are sitting at home. They are all qualified. They are all, software professionals and HR professionals. They're sitting at home basically because there's no one to share their burden at home. So as Pranav said, these equations will have to change. Mobility is another critical factor. Safe, reliable, affordable, transportation solutions will have to be designed so that women, and metro has made a whole lot of difference. For example, in Delhi, girls from Gurgaon are going to North Campus. I mean, it couldn't have happened. It's difficult to make the difference between a girl whose mother is working in somebody's house and the girl from that house, because metro is a class leveler in that sense, which is great and which is fantastic. And my last thought would be when women kind of bring money on the table, they make the decisions. Anybody who says pakode khayenge aaj to hum table pe pair rakhe, wo isliye keh sakta hai kyun paisa lagta hai. Girls also have to be engaged to say, hey, if you have to work so hard at home, working 10 hours and 12 hours, why don't you go out and work? You will also be able to order pakodas when you reach home. So a couple of things will have to be changed at all levels, of course, favorable policies. But let me stop here, otherwise I'll keep speaking the whole day. I know the challenges as well. So.
Kanta, thank you so much. And before I proceed, I think, Sarika, you were itching to kind of come in at some point. Yes.
I just wanted to also, actually agree with Kanta on a couple of things. First and foremost, I also believe there is no sector which cannot have gender. I do not believe that. It was all the sectors were initially all male dominated. Over a period of time, as Pranav pointed out, low hanging fruits, women entered certain sectors where they were needed because they couldn't do without the women out there, especially on the nursing side, as they said, because not too many men were willing to do that dirty job. I'll call it a dirty job because I will not like to call it a caregiving, because every time we always associate women stereotype yet that she's a caregiver, she does soft jobs, she does soft skills, and we do injustice to say that she cannot do those tough jobs or she cannot do the other roles. I would like to point out the fact that there are many corporates, including organizations like PepsiCo, who have made factories which are all women, 100% women-led factories. There are engineering factories which are 100% led women factories. And there are many examples. So if there's a will, there's a way. So as I said, Kanta said it right, safety in numbers, 1 is solo, 2 is pair, 3 is actually strength. And that's whether it's at the boardroom, whether it's at the work floor, whether it's any place else. The second point, the 3 M's, the marriage, the mobility, and the maternity. These are the 3 M's. If any corporate, any workplace, any employer is able to support these 3 M's through the journey of a woman, they will find that they have a rock star on hand. It has been proven about the fact that women are far more committed. The statistics suggest that women don't change jobs as often. They are more loyal, they are more passionate, and they're more committed to work if these 3 stages are taken care of. So just wanted to rest my point out there.
Thank you so much, Sarika. Completely in agreement. So Kanta, what I'm also in a way hearing is that, of course, the safety issue and the mobility, transportation, these are the obvious barriers for women to enter, into workforce. Yes. Sometimes when we design programs and when we design initiatives, especially in the rural or the semi-urban belt, we often because these are such stark barriers for women to enter, we kind of design program to either negotiate or address these kind of barriers. But do you think there are other kinds of systemic barriers that should also be juxtaposed side by side to these barriers that we know of in terms of mobility, transportation, and all of that? For example, how important do you think is a household dialogue to happen, in order to kind of bring that kind of a set, so there could be other such kind of, initiatives that can be very well woven into an initiative or a program to address the larger stereotypes and the gender, aspects of our work. So, Kanta, what are your thoughts on that?
So I used to use these same sentences in my gender trainings earlier. Mindset change, we have to work, it will take time. And then I saw something very phenomenal. And I share this example. So if anybody has heard this before, please pardon me for that. So 2 things I always say, just for my own kind of comfort, probably, that this century belongs to women. And seriously, there's not even a single place where women have not reached. So it is now for us to multiply those numbers and quickly there. I know there are difficulties, so we can keep talking about challenges throughout, but the time has come now when even girls have to start feeling that they are not there to just serve and just to be told what to do, but to do something themselves. So that's my conversation with the girls. On mindset, I always say, Purna, that, you remember in 2010, Commonwealth Games happened. Before that, Haryana used to be one of the most patriarchal states, where saying wearing jeans, taking mobile phone, these things. And then the Commonwealth Games happened. And I'm not even going by this, what happened thereafter. The Fogart sisters won medals. They got a lot of money, a government job, and a lot of recognition, not only for themselves, but for parents. You know what happened? That mindset went out of a window. Wherein Haryana has 200 akhadas for girls now, right? What happened to those conservative parents? So when girls bring money, if they bring it for 3 months, trust me, the household dynamics change. And that girls have to realize now. what gives Fogart sisters visibility? All girls are capable of doing that, and not only Haryana, every state. So 50% of the medals in Haryana now are being brought by girls. Internationally, you see Olympics, primarily because government jobs are there. So good policies also matter. Family change. Let's not go by what has been said before. I literally changed my narrative in gender trainings now. It changes. A girl tops an exam, a rickshaw puller's daughter, clears NEET exam or IITG exam, and within 5 minutes, the entire generation of people in her colony change. When her photo comes on TV, things change. So if media, technology, if narrative change can help girls' case, why should also we not focus on that? And trust me, girls are ready for that challenge. We just keep stopping them at different levels. So yes, community level change work is required, but we need success stories quickly. We need to highlight them quickly. We need role models who we can then take their stories to the outer world and help girls win. That's what I would like to say.
Thank you so much, Kanta. I think I'll pick up on what Pranav had earlier kind of very briefly touched upon, that, maybe over the last decade or so, India made a considerable progress in increasing probably access to education for our girls, and also increasing women's working age and enrolling them in secondary schools. And despite that, there are women who are not being able to access jobs or start up a business, or especially in the rural areas. So Pranav, what does skilling come in? Where does skilling come in here, and what role does skilling play in terms of making that transition from education to an employment? And also picking up from Kanta, I would like to hear how are these skilling programs incorporating building the agency of that woman, so that she is able to choose where she wants to go, what kind of job she wants to pick up, and then attune that skilling program for her own aspirations. So if you can make that bridge, and through your probably the work that you do.
Yes, thank you, Purna. And I completely agree what Kanta and Sarika talked about, because see, issues are many, and it came to my mind when Kanta was talking about just by design, if you increase the number of women in any sector, at least you can resolve the safety issue. So I have not thought on this. So at least it's a good strategy. It can be, if you want to really make workplaces safe, at least increase the number of women. Coming to your question, see, I will just quote the key learnings from the current pilot, which is undergoing, and we have completed almost 1 year. That 2 key learnings have been of this pilot, this 35 to 45 age group skill development program, especially for women. That you don't need to train women. First, start training men. Because see what happened, that in earlier program, we are doing parents meet. And then we realized that despite delivering a quality training program in first 2 batches, when the time came for placement, no one was opting for that. Suddenly, some guardian, mainly husbands, started discussing with our team, no, she will not do front-end desk job, provide some back-end job. She will not go out, this, that. So then what we introduced that, okay, let's have a husbands meet, like a parents meet. The reality is that the husbands are deciding what their wives will do. And then we started sensitizing them that why a woman should work. So that has been a big learning, that when we talk about skilling programs for women, you must have a very core module to sensitize men or the decision makers in that family. That is one key learning. The second is, even if you are training someone who either never worked or left their job, say 5-10 years back, please ensure that you are training them. And Kanta raised this point on how to handle their finances. And today, earlier it was difficult because you have to go to bank, write a check, withdraw money, but now things can be done online. So we are ensuring that the financial literacy part, if they don't have bank account, Now employers are asking for bank accounts, so we have to open that, but otherwise also, and helping them to do online transactions, everything, or maybe online, ordering something, buying something online. So these two learnings are very important when you are designing anything, any livelihood program. When you design, so what happens that you train someone, women start earning, and then whatever the excess is not there. So the whatever money they will earn, finally, she doesn't know that where the money is going and how to use it, if she wants to use for herself or maybe her kids and all. My thesis has been, and this is my personal view, my thesis has been that decreasing women labor force participation, especially in India, is not a skill gap issue. It plays important role. So if the problem is say 100%, 10% skill gap, you can say, but there is, Kanta was highlighting that so many women sitting in, especially in urban and rural areas, a lot of talent, but currently the ecosystem is not allowing them to participate. So just coming up with some agenda, though we work on skilling, that no, women labor force participation you can solve by training someone. These are few ideas which will help more women to participate, but it will not help you to solve the problem. To solve the problem, focus on bringing some reform or tweaking few things which Sarika and Kanta talked about. Unless you do that, participation of women is not going to increase. Again, take it as my personal view. And that is why in very small way, we are trying something, and in a very like advocacy mode. So this pilot, we are just doing in 2 states, one in Andhra and Kerala, in partnership with NSDC, and MOU is that we will just submit a report so that tomorrow Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship or NSDC, they will, because they work with more than 600, 800 partners. So they will push this agenda. So that's the MOU we have with them. Over to you, Purna.
Thank you so much. I think the fact that you're saying that the low participation of women in workforce is not just a skill gap issue. I think this is really important, because there are somewhere it also kind of boils down to the evidence that has come out says that when there is a male working member, and then going back to the gender stereotypical role of men being the breadwinner, and when there is enough of resource coming in that house, women chooses to be in the domestic work and care providing work space, and they are comfortable in it. So this is quite a dichotomy, because you want to kind of then enable and the women, but they are choosing to be indoors. Kanta, what is your comment on that aspect, where there's a question of choice? And Sarika, I will also kind of go and ask the same kind of perspective from you, because you do work in the corporate, where there is, could be women leaving because of this, choice that they are making, if at all you hit upon such cases. But Kanta, to start from you, what do you feel about this?
Absolutely, Purna, as an organization and as an individual, I really uphold the rights of every woman and the choices she makes. If she's happy doing what she's doing, perfectly okay. Who are we to tell her that this is wrong or right for her? Only issue is when she doesn't have choices to make. When somebody else is making her choices, when somebody else is telling her what to do and what not to do. Also, she's not given enough opportunities to even realize that there are choices, right? You don't know how strong you are till the time you know how, when being strong is the only choice you have, right? So when a woman becomes a widow, for example, I'm just giving an example, my mom who was widowed at 32 and no money at home, where were the choices? And who could match her strength at that point in time? I never saw her crying. And a woman who had never been to a school. So if a woman can take, a man would literally बिखर जाएगा वो, अगर ऐसा उसके साथ अगर 5 बच्चे उसके हैं और उसको कुछ नहीं है सपोर्ट करने को, he will just break down. A woman has no time to break down. She has to, even if she's being beaten at home, she'll pick up her children and will try to save her child first, right? So I'm saying difficulty is that women don't have choices, and they have not been given the freedom to think that they have choices, because somebody else has been making those choices for her. I would like to recollect a personal experience that when you, and I come from a rural family and an agrarian family at that. When you are young, you are 8 years old, and I'm talking about women who I work with now who belong to the same background that I came from. When you are sitting with your mother and your mother is telling the brothers and you कि इतना जमीन है, इतना आपके हिस्से आ जाएगा. As an 8-year-old, you don't understand, Purna, as to where will you go, right? शादी होगी, मेरे को जमीन नहीं मिलेगी, सब ख्याल नहीं आते, उस वक्त नहीं पता होता है. Only thing that you feel is that you don't belong here. And if you don't belong here, you don't have a picture of where you will go ultimately. What happens then? Just imagine, without understanding, and my mom didn't do it on purpose, this is how her training was, that land will belong to the boys. घर जिसको लीप पोत के हम ठीक करते हैं, that house doesn't belong to us. So women are permanent refugees in that sense. Unless you reach an age of 50 or 55, nothing in the household belongs to you, even for people like us who are working. The car is in husband's name, the first house is in husband's name, only when the second house is made that you are thought about, right? So I'm saying, when women don't have choices to study economics or study poetry, what are we talking about? You talk to the girls today who are studying in LSR, and they have choices to make because they are aware that they can make choices, even with the limitations that girls have. I'm not saying even they are free to do everything they want. I'm saying, but they know at least. So awareness is the key, that you are a human being, you have human rights. Constitution is one of the most progressive documents. It has given you equal rights. So start exercising those rights. But who is engaging them? Who is talking to them? Where are the platforms where parents or elderly people or society people and people like us talk to us? So my Saturday always goes in talking to young women in rural belt, in rural colleges and ITIs, and because this is our responsibility, Purna. It's not just government. All of us have to do that role to say, hey girls, you belong, you matter, it is your choice. Start exciting, and don't let anybody tell how big or small your dreams are. They are important. So I become emotional about these things.
No, I can feel that. I think that really touches, I think, a lot of hearts here, especially women. Thank you for that, Kanta. Sarika, do you have anything to add to that?
So actually, Kanta said it all, but I would like to add a couple of things over here, and I'll take it at each level, starting from the women's education. We are not trained, or as Kanta had earlier said, we were trained always for the marriage material. And therefore, every time women or girls were actually encouraged to take up very soft careers, teaching kar lo, nursing kar lo, padhai kar lo, poetry kar lo, English literature kar lo. We all know what is the economic potential in some of these careers versus, say, a STEM career, or versus some of the tough roles like an economist career and all. And the challenge was also not because of that. The challenge was even the parents could not think, because there were no role models, there were no champions, and there was nobody to even guide the parents that the girl can do this kind of a role. So that is first part. Even if a girl ultimately wants to decide to do a STEM career, the typical education system, I also wear an educationist hat these days. So a typical education system today, the famous NEET exams or the IIT JEE prep, which we have, where so many lakhs and lakhs of aspirants sit through, the girls applicants are still one of the lower number. And ultimately getting through those exams and then eventually going to a prestigious college is also very difficult. Why? They don't have access to after school coaching, because those are evening classes. Parents can't send them because of the safety issue. Plus they're expensive. They don't want to spend that kind of money. Plus these programs are 4 years, 5 years, again, safety in the hostels, plus 4 years, 5 years, marriageable age, which is a patriarchal societal mindset. So all these three things become a challenge. And therefore there's a first step where the girls are basically asked to take a backseat in their career. That's the first part. The second time, when she is basically into a workforce, she doesn't have a mentorship or a role model or champion even at the workforce. A man will typically have a sutta break, or will typically, meet and greet during lunches and coffees. Why? Because it's male-dominated group. She has not been able to form an agency of sponsorship around her who can guide her in her initial years of her career to tell her what needs to be done, because she came from a background where nobody was able to guide her even at her home. So where is she supposed to get her guidance or mentorship? Third stage, when they get married, and to Pranav's point, They become financially independent, but many a times that financial literacy is not there because earlier the parents were managing the wealth and later on the husband is managing the wealth. And this is, by the way, happening in almost all privileged society, with many women having all the best of the jobs and yet not being aware what's happening to their money. This has been the biggest challenge, which I have been very closely working with, and I get appalled to see that it's still continuing. And it's just because women tend to shy away from money. I don't know why, but it's just that we don't want to talk about money. We think it's dirty. It's a challenge to talk about money or to take care of the money. The fourth challenge, when they have kids, and that's the time, it is societal expectations, not only just choices. Even if they have a choices, it's a societal expectations that she is the primary caregiver. Anyways, the organization is giving the 6 months off thanks to the new policy, but the manager may or may not be supportive. Even if the manager and the workforce is supportive, the family is not supportive. By that time, the husband and the partner is earning as a primary caregiver, the primary breadwinner, and a woman also sometimes say, it's okay. Kyun main itna chik chik lu? Why should I take so much of a hassle and fight for someone, and might as well let my career go? They do not realize it is not about the money for those 2 or 3 years. It is about just being in the workforce, because the exponential growth which she will get by just sticking out there in her career later on, she's not taking that economic potential and exponential growth in her career. And sometimes you need a mentorship, you need some champion, and you need somebody to hold your hand and make you aware of those choices. As rightly put, if you're making it a choice with a conscious decision, well and good. The fourth point, when they do realize, and given the today's situation, even a double income is a challenge in a family to take care of the inflationary expectations and the living standards which we have. And given the pandemic and many other things, many people have lost their primary breadwinners. There's a whole COVID widows, groups which are being formed. And I have received such amazing resumes, but women who have now lost that confidence because they've been out of the workforce for a pretty long time. It requires somebody else to, again, I would not call it reskilling, but I would say more in terms of mindset change and helping them through this tough period of transition and then coming back to the workforce. And for that reason, I would also say a lot of effort needs to go by the women themselves too. Unfortunately, what Kanta suggested about a particular group, I will not name it, but many such women are there who expect that it is a right for them to go back to workforce, but they do not realize that 5 years, 10 years have gone away. Are they relevant back into the workforce? Are they willing to invest in themselves? And that responsibility lies with many women to take that responsibility of investing in themselves and not investing on certain superficial things. We do not, as a group, even the men and the women in India, we expect the education to be funded by the parents, and later on reskilling and training to be funded by the employers. And unfortunately, we don't invest in our own learning and our own development, unlike some of the developed countries. And I'm talking about the privileged communities over here. I do understand some of the other communities may not have the luxury, but I feel that they have more initiative because they don't have a choice. As Kanta said, some of these people take more initiatives. Some people who have the privileges and choices don't take that initiatives. And that's where I would like to point out that it is a responsibility, I would say, quite a bit to the women folk also to invest in themselves, in their learning, in their development, to eventually come back to the workforce. Celebrating some of these role models who have stuck there. We had Leena Nair today. I loved the new Amul ad. You spoke about Fogart sisters. You spoke about any role models. Let's celebrate them. Let's create more role models, more mentors, more sponsors, and let's create men as allies, men as sponsors, men as advocates, and make sure that each and every woman within the workforce or outside the workforce has enough opportunities and choices and awareness to ultimately decide what she wants for her life.
Sarika, thank you so much. You've covered a realm of things. Where you end is, also how the entire movement, which kind of specifically speaks about women's inclusion or equality, and how do we, there have been decades where the feminist movement kind of completely excluded the men in the discourses, and that kind of did not succeed. And then there was a requirement that came up that we cannot have issues that concern women and not have men be a part of those discourses. It doesn't work like
preaching to the preacher. I mean,
yes,
3 women discussing challenges in women and what we need to do doesn't make sense. 70% of the workforce happens to be men.
men,
We need to speak
correct.
to them.
So, while we are doing that, we are parallelly kind of creating a equitable world, an equal world for women. And do you see the entire bulk of another chunk of men who are feeling defensive, and there's a resistance that is coming, even at the school level, where there are, girl children who are doing so well, they are speaking up in classes, and then, that transition happens when that, they kind of come into the workplace, and again, they are faring well if given a chance, an opportunity, they're excelling. So is it kind of, it's like, letting go of these spaces that was so male dominated, and in areas and sectors which were known to be male dominated, be it in the STEM and in engineering jobs for that matter. So how is that playing out with men? And we have only one man in this panel. Pranav, can I start and throw this question at you and see what is that psyche going there?
No, you raised a very important point. And I also represent like Indian male. And thankfully, I had 4 sisters. So slightly like the orientation was like that women are important in lives, and I was the youngest one, so you can't do anything. But having said that, what happens that once you sensitize men, and my main sensitization happened when I joined ActionAid. That was my first job. And a lot of, I was not aware about these small issues that, okay, who will have right, or if you have wealth, who will have access, who will have control, things like that. So I give credit to ActionAid in my very formative years when I started working to at least sensitize, and how it helped me, say years back, years later when I bought, when we bought, my wife is also working, but we made a very conscious choice that even if when we had a first kid, that my wife will not leave the job. And somehow it came from the orientations we received with an open mind. When I bought my first house, I ensured that no, equal participation should be there, just for not the namesake. So we are the co-owner of the house because I have only one daughter. If you visit my house, these are small things. There is a nameplate. It talks about Anupama and Pranav, not Pranav and Anupama. So I think that sensitization will play a very, very important role. The same thing we have also seen in the current pilot, because when you talk to these men, basically they are also concerned perhaps about safety issues. Sometimes few men are not even aware, so they think that no, this is not right, that women should work. Very good example of Forget sisters from Haryana, Kanta gave. Now there is a big economy around that. So once you enable women to become financially independent, things will change automatically. Sometimes you don't need any reform for that. But how that will happen, that has to start at family level. I completely agree. We are part of a highly patriarchal society, but we need to grow, we need to progress. So a lot of sensitization program, we do that in our person with disability program. We interact with employers, we first sensitize them before they hire any person with disabilities. Same thing, a lot of sensitization program should be organized to address that mindset. One is that, so that the participation of men will be there. At the same time, we have to make this agenda why the women labor force participation is decreasing globally, or at India level, it is almost 50% or 50.50 or 49.50. The recent World Inequality Report 2022, they are saying that it is globally only 35%. In India, it is only 18% of the total labor income, which is being generated. 18% is coming or earned by only women. So I think these issues need to change, but definitely men will play a very, very important part, sometimes as a father, sometimes as a husband, or sometimes as a brother. Though I was very small, but I had some say in my family, what my sisters will be doing. And somehow our family never recognizes that. That is also their sensitization level. Okay, it's fine. So I think sensitization, I'm making a very simple point, that sensitization, just leaving the debate there, that perhaps men are like that, we need to dig deeper and understand that psyche and help them to change that. If that efforts are not being made, I also worry that a lot of other reforms, which like at policy level, pen-based reform, government will keep taking. I will just give another example, like the Sexual Harassment Act. When it came, we started forming committees in Dr. Reddy's foundation. We formed a committee. We started sensitizing people, and suddenly we realized that different other departments, they stopped hiring women. Why so? Because, oh my God, such a strict law. What will happen if tomorrow someone will complain? Just a concern, because they don't understand the policy in detail. And then we hired someone from that real background. Then we had the similar sensitization program. We pasted poster. We created one forum where their questions can be answered. And also we made it mandatory that no, you have to hire. If you have a team of 10 people, have at least 4 or 5 people. There is no dearth of talent. Second, as Sarika was talking about this, the new act of this 24 weeks of maternity leave and all. Now, what is happening? Just look at my programs. My programs are funded by different partners, including Dr. Reddy's and all. These are yearly programs. Now, I have, say, 400 people or 500 people, say, in some project. If 50% are women, 250 are women, and these are young in age, definitely few people will get married and go for and start planning for a baby. Now, the moment they will ask for 6 months leave, your project should have budget to support them. We face that challenge because as an organization, and no one is going to support you for that. They will say, okay, 500 people, salary is this much, so multiplied by that. We created a fund that we can't ask female employees to leave because they are getting married and they are trying to start a family. And then that in different projects also, we take care of that 6 months salary through some other corpus fund we have created. Now, because like we have some support of Dr. Reddy's and all, some flexibility, we can create that. But just imagine for small foundations, how they will do that. It's a huge amount. So I think that everyone should be, like the donor should be enlightened that, okay, if you are supporting how you are handling this issue, the new act came 2017, perhaps 24 weeks paid leave, how you are going to ensure in your project. So we have to talk at those granular level and then sensitize everyone. And I believe that few donors who are our long-term donors, they agreed to this idea. They said, no, you never discussed about that. Now you're sharing it. Please add that. Don't worry. Every time there is some saving in a project, even if not there, we will add that. So change will bring, if you want to bring some change, you have to align more people, especially women labor force participation. If you want to increase, we need to align more people at policy level, at organization level, and by number. Irony is that in current India, the number, these people will be mostly men. And that is why we need to sensitize them. Over to you, Purna.
Oh, fantastic insights, Pranav. Thank you so much. You're talking about very, very important issues where you're saying that, in the workspace, you do have these laws and legislation which are for the protection of women in workplaces. But then the companies get scared because these are these, they are not able to negotiate and make the most, keep it in their interest. So the maternity leave or even the POSH Act itself, there's a kind of a resistance and the scare factor that has come in with that. And this is certainly not what was anticipated when these laws were probably created in the first place. So, on that note, Kanta, I will come to you. UN Women probably is the only UN agency that works very, very closely with various women's rights movements in India. And and as a facilitative agency, how has UN Women created that convergence, among these independent movements and the civil society voices and other partnerships to influence policy and address these gaps? How does that play out for UN Women? What is that role that are you playing, to kind of bring all these partners together and then create that policy impact?
Thank you, Purna. You're right. We are the specialized agency of the UN system that works on gender equality across the globe. And if you would know that we work at 4 levels, we work very closely with the government to look at all their policies, programs, budgets, and implementation from a gender perspective. So not only WCD, but we also work with several other ministries, including corporate affairs. So that's one level of work that we do, Purna. And sometimes, we are not strong enough, I would say, that, and we are not supposed to be. We are an intergovernmental body. Our job is not to push the government beyond a level. We keep nudging them that probably these are the global good practices. Can we do this? Reporting at international level, the normative framework that government has to report for. So we look at all those things, also strengthening programs. So our job is primarily technical advisory services to the government to strengthen program implementation or look at policies. That's one level of work that we do. We also work very closely with private sector, particularly related to women's role in private sector. More women in leaderships, more women in boardrooms, women-led procurement, women-led businesses, money for women's entrepreneurship at different levels, and how women have not been able to utilize the VC funds or the institutional funds that have been created by the government as well as private investors and banks. So we have something called Business Sector Advisory Council, which has membership of the top 17 companies, including the Tatas with us. So they keep taking our agenda forward through their companies, their mandate, and their network of companies. Similarly, we have a civil society advisory group, CSAC we call it, BSAC and CSAC. So we work with them at 2 levels. One is taking inputs from them on what is happening. Like today, the marriage age has been increased to 21 years for girls. Now, in simple language and with simple eyes, you can say that it's a good step, but there are some repercussions of this development. So we take support and take inputs from the civil society and who represent women from across the country, and then take the agenda forward to the government, either sometimes with them and sometimes without them. But we do carry their voices. That's a responsibility on us because UN Women was created by civil society pressures. UN didn't have a specialized agency earlier. We are just 10 years old and one of the smallest agencies of the UN system. And the 4th work that we do, which is very important, and I value that a lot, is our work on the ground. Whatever you tell me, Pranav tells me, or a civil society group tells me is one part of informing us. We also build evidence ourselves to see these are the things happening. And I have done a lot of, for the last 10 years, I've been working in this skilling, employment, and entrepreneurship space. And I have ground examples from different parts of the country as to how things happen there. And I would say, though our role is not that, but I personally take interest, that's out of my personal interest, that I go out and talk to the girls, meet families, meet sarpanches, meet government. So I do that a lot because it interests me a lot. So that is evidence generation from the ground, so that when we speak to the government, they don't say, UN wale hain, inko kuch pata nahi hai, number baat kar rahe. So we really want to add weight to what we say, and government takes us seriously. This morning we were talking to NDMA, And NDMA may not have a gender focus, but this is what we want to do, saying disasters impact men and women differently. How are you planning to do that? To plan for that. So all those kinds of inputs where we engage with Niti Aayog through the different ministries, that's our role. Sometimes we bring all of them together because we, in our convening role, we bring these 4 partners together, and so that they can talk to each other, they can listen to each other, they can also probably help each other. Because most important thing, as Pranav said, is sensitization, also engagement, also many things that don't occur to you when you're sitting in your room and you listen from somebody else, it becomes easier and simpler, and it becomes a little more important for you in your role, in whichever role you're playing. So it's a very interesting work. For me, it was a dream to work here in UN. And I'm living my dream. And I'm saying to all the listeners, and if there are young girls there, that with this dream fulfilled, seriously, Purna, there's not even a single dream that I have. There won't be many people in the world who will say all my dreams have been fulfilled. Mine have been. So my only dream is now to help other girls realize their dreams. So on that, I'll stop.
What a fantastic note you end your speech on. I hope everybody can take that positivity and hope and aspiration from their work as well. I think it's dream in its true sense. Thank you so much, Kanta, for kind of clarifying that, because the reason I ask this question is that sometimes when we see these sectors in silo, there is somewhere the loss of the voices of an entire civil society, or women as individuals that kind of go and inform policies, so you become that connection among the voices, individual voices, to the government policies, and also the corporate sectors also. I think that entire cycle works so beautifully. I think that is what is probably needed, kind of have these various departments and agencies and institutions work in coherence with each other to address the issue that we raised today of, women, the gender gap in employment. So I think you clarified that beautifully. So I am really mindful of the time now. We have 7 minutes to go, and we do have a question from the audience. And let me read out this question as is. And it is to Sarika and from Vasundhara Goel from Satya Capital. So, she asks, why are men increasingly excluded from measures to improve gender equality? No one views men's health as a gender equality issue. However, men's health also needs to be addressed at a systemic level alongside work to address gender equality. Sarika, do you want to pick that up?
I'm not sure if I understand the question well. Is she talking about men's health other than in the gender equality part of it? Is there a challenge?
I think the way I can paraphrase is that, the gender equality issue is not excluded from the issue of men. The fact that men are also victims of the stereotypes, it affects the men's mental health as well. They are also victims of the patriarchy, if I'm correct in kind of paraphrasing it. So if you can.
I completely and totally agree on that fact. I believe in the fact of inclusion, and I don't believe in the fact of one gender being superior to the other gender, or one gender being victimized over the other gender. And that's why, let me take one step back. There are challenges in the journeys of the women, which we have for the last 1 hour, we have discussed quite a few, and everybody would agree that somehow or the other, because of physiologically, societally, patriarchal mindsets or whatever, there are certain challenges which we need to address to make them an equal footing. Nobody is talking about that men are not important. They are important. It's just that if it's like this, we need to put this over here. It's not about putting them down, but raising the level of the women. Bringing that to the point, I am not in favor of 2-3 things, which happens in a pro-women situation at the workplace. I've been sitting on quite a few posh committees of leading corporates over the last decade or so. I don't sit on it anymore, but and we have always advised, while the posh committee by the law act says that it is for the women's safety, but we actually advise companies and forward-looking organizations to make it all gender inclusive. First of all, gender is no longer binary. We have to understand that. And we talk about that all your employees should feel safe. There are issues of bullying for men. There are sexual harassment against men. There are many false accusations which happens. And if there's one small statistics which I would share, during promotion times, many organizations suddenly see a spike of complaints of sexual harassment. It is a statistically proven thing. But of course, it's generally not discussed out in the open. And there are cases in which false accusations happen. Does it mean that women are not sexually harassed? Does it mean that women are safe? No. We need to protect their rights, but we need to protect the rights of the men equally. And therefore, whatever the POSH Act as it stands, the sexual harassment policy as it stands within an organization, I always recommend to make it inclusive. Make it inclusive for the men. It talks about employee and not talks about a woman employee. First and foremost, that part of it. Second piece, on the maternity policy, to be honest, if I really have to put my heart to it, when the Policy Act came in, and even I was part of some of the think tanks where we were discussing this policy, we were also asked our recommendations and ideas and suggestions. While in the intent level, it was great, but I was a little, I would say, a little worried about the way it would be implemented. And I was worried about the fact that organizations and managers will not react to it in a positive manner. And we saw the repercussions that suddenly in the hiring process, suddenly in the other promotion process, the numbers had started dwindling for the women. And therefore, it was important to understand what these managers were going through, which were largely men, by the way, because they also had mental pressure of the numbers. They had the mental pressure of bringing the teams together and providing for the bottom line, which takes care of all the other employees as well. And therefore, there was a lot of counseling which needed to take place. Mental health issues is becoming a very big challenge at workplace, which is being addressed, which is inclusive for all the employees. So yes, it has to be for the men as well. And from a patriarchal mindset, while it is detrimental to the women, it is equally detrimental to the men. To actually put all the burden of bringing in the mullah at home to make sure that he is a primary caregiver and the primary breadwinner is a very big detrimental for the men. And it doesn't give them an opportunity to do anything else which may or may not build the career. Every man doesn't need to be a primary breadwinner. He might want to do something else. So yes, I do believe both the sides of the coin are equally true, but the idea is not pulling this down, but the idea is pulling this up. That's all.
Sarika, thank you so much. Yes, Kanta.
Purna, I just wanted to complete what Sarika just mentioned. Sure. Definitely. See, one, we need to understand men and women come from the same society. If patriarchy impacts women, patriarchy also impacts men the other way. You would have seen that, and I recently Queen film में आपने देखा कि 5 साल का भाई बहन के साथ जाता है. Now, can you imagine that situation if something happens to the girl? What will that 5-year-old boy do? So the pressure to protect, the pressure to provide weighs a man down and continues to do that. Even if he's not in a position to, physically, he's not so capable, even when he grows up. So patriarchy impacts both men and women equally, right? The pressures, the expectations, the norms, the roles, everything is just assigned to us because we are men and women, right? So we have to set ourselves free to say, if a man enjoys being at home and cooking and taking care of the children, of course. And if a woman wants to go out, and if both of them want to stay at home and do something from home, of course. So I just wanted to kind of agree with what Sarika was saying, and this is what we need to do, not one down and one up. We have to bring them in.
I wish this discussion continued forever and ever, but I don't think we have the luxury of time anyway. I see Mayuk right there as the monitor of the classroom. But yes, thank you so much, each one of you, for this very engaging discussion. And Mayuk, do you want to take over from here?
Thank you, Purna, for the discussions. Thank you to all the panelists for what has been a truly exciting and informative discussion today. And thank you once again to the panel for bringing up not just the challenges and the action areas, but the very positive trends that have started to become visible, the positive trends that are a result of not just pioneers in the industry, but also some systemic changes prodded by policy measures, both by the government and the intergovernment agencies. These positive trends are now, as I mentioned, leading to tipping points, which are promising to change the narrative. And I'll just end with what Kanta ma'am said today, the century belongs to women. So we'll end on that positive note. And before ending, I would thank the panelists once more. And more importantly, I would like to thank you, Purna Raichaudhuri, for so effectively steering this conversation today and leading us to our conclusions for the day. Before ending, I would also like to thank all the delegates who have joined us online on this platform today. Thank you for your participation and thank you for sending in your questions. I'd like to also thank Grameen Foundation India once more for co-curating this session. With that, we reach the end of day 1 of the Livelihoods India Summit. And we have also reached the end of the track 3 discussions on jobs in the post-pandemic era. We had 2 technical sessions where we addressed the 2 very major important points of skill gaps in youth employment in the first session and the gender gap in employment in the second session. We hope we have had a very informative and exciting day today, all the delegates, and we hope we'll be back tomorrow for day 2 of the Livelihoods India Summit tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. At 9:30 a.m., we start with plenary session 3, which is Gender and Women Inclusive Entrepreneurship in the Global South. Thank you everyone once again for participating. Please hope you have a very nice evening and join us at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.